one of the first issues is mindset. We are looking at the challenges that are holding us back. We are not looking at the opportunities that allow us to fly. So I think one of the first things we as a nation need to do is how we think. We need to change the way we think. And it's difficult. This is not easy because the backbone for this thought process to change has to evolve or has to come from our education system. What needs a complete overhaul in the way it is imparted is from our ground learning, that is from even the basic primary learning, is the thought process behind the education system. Somewhere the older systems that were prevalent in Bharat, they how would I say it? They promoted curiosity, they promoted research, they promoted shodh, and they also promoted chronicling the understanding and taking it forward. So they also promoted innovation. That seems to have stopped or stunted ever since post-independence. The entire education system was drafted to more mimic the West rather than learn from our own itihasa. So we are taught from childhood to learn a language which is not ours, to think in a manner which is not ours, and to know and learn stories which are not ours. So we grow up thinking we are not as good as them. You see, so this whole thing is all about our own challenges. We have to fight challenges. It's opportunity. So that mindset will come when we learn about stories which are about Bharat. Stories which are about our people, our culture, our traditions, our heroes, our villains, our own innovations. So why should a biography of Ayn Rand be written? Why not a biography of C.V. Raman? Yeah, you get me? So I think that's where the biggest problem is. And this has been something which a lot of people have advocated, and I'm very strongly advocating this. See, we're having this conversation in a language which is not ours. We should have had this conversation in a language which is from Bharat, be it Tamil, be it Hindi, be it Sanskrit, whatever it is. And you could have asked me a question in one language and I could have answered it in another Bharatiya language. Both would have understood each other because we know both the languages. We're not being taught that. We're not being taught 4 languages, 5 languages. We're not being taught that. In our head, we've been taught that you are skilled, you are smart, you are educated if you know English. Why? A person who does not know English cannot think. A person who does not know English cannot innovate. What makes us think like that? So one of our challenges is that, should I hire a person based, okay, now I'm an English language channel, so I need somebody who speaks good English. Correct. So that's the need of the job. But when it comes to skills, should you walk into an interview thinking, oh, I can't speak English, so I will not get the job? Despite the fact that you can design, you can build, you can innovate, so that you need thought, you don't need language. Why can't you learn your textbooks in the language you understand? So what's happening? Parents are not talking to their children in their mother tongue, they're talking to them in English. Now that's current English. So you are getting de-linked from your language. What is the language? Language is a window into our own culture. So a language is lost, that means slowly culture is lost. So what is the objective? The colonialists in the 1890s thought that we want to leave this country. Whenever we have to leave this country, we will leave them as brown babus. What are all of us now? Brown babus. Right? Brown English. That's what we've become. Now, can we change that? Yes. That's where the opportunity is. If the youth of today can invest some more time in learning their own, going back and pushing their grandmother and grandfather to teach them their mother tongue. Use Duolingo to learn your mother tongue. not a foreign language. The Germans insist on learning Sanskrit. We don't. See, look at the irony. The founders of IIT Madras were German. And that was soon after the World War. Soon after the world had branded them villains. And what did they fund? Education, research, learning. What did we do after getting independence? Let's ape the West. Not that in the Constituent Assembly there were not people who said that we need to learn our own and we should go back to our own. But that's all. Regret the long answer, but the issue is the mindset. Issue is the mindset. Youth of today have been conditioned by parents of yesterday and parents of today to padho likho and get out of the country. Get an IIT degree, become an engineer, find a job outside, get out of India. And that's the saddest part. Because those parents have forgotten it is this country that has given them whatever they are so that they could put you into IITs and make you engineers and give you a choice to aspire. Why can't you aspire to build for the country? Go find a job. No. Go create jobs, please. I think IIT Madras, Professor Kamagoti is somebody who's pushing that. I've spoken with him. So I think that is the mindset change we need. So it's not challenges, man. Challenges will always exist. Because what's life without challenges? It's about seeing them as opportunities. Because what's life without opportunities?
As you rightly pointed out, we have had a tremendous import of practices from the West. But currently we are also seeing India play an increasingly central role in a lot of international forums and trying to act as a bridge between the global north and the south, especially along the lines of the G20, the BRICS and so on. What role do you think India should play at such platforms to amplify its voice, its influence, and thereby shape global goals?
What role Bharat will play? This is again another thing. When we speak in Hindi, we say Bharat. When we speak in English, we say India. Why can't we say Bharat when we are speaking in English? And why can't we say India when we speak in Hindi? Okay? We don't need to break it by language. That's also a condition. Anyway. But I prefer to use Bharat. The role that we will play will be defined by how we see ourselves. Today, Bharat is the mirror to the developing world or the leader of the global south. A combination of 105 countries. And these 105 countries are the ones which are going to drive economies in the future. We are the ones who are telling the world that there is a third alternative beyond the two hegemonies. And that third alternative is to walk your own path. Make your own friends. Now, is that an easy path? But when we walk that path, what do? We give others belief that they can also walk the same path. Now, will we stumble? Yes. Will we fall sometimes? Yes. So should we stay fallen or should we get up and rise and walk on? So we will make mistakes. We will be faced with more opportunities, which at times will look like roadblocks or challenges. The option is either we smash those roadblocks, we jump or over those roadblocks, we circumvent those roadblocks, but we find a way forward. I think that mindset slowly is coming into our head. Trump may have problems and create problems with H-1B visas, no problem, it's alright. We figure out another option. Because 4 countries have stood up and said, come to us. Right? There is a 5th country, that is your own country, saying stay back here. Right? So there are always options. So I think that's what we are trying to do. Our role forward is that if you are not going to respect rules-based orders, then don't expect us to do it. You can't do something thinking that you are a developed nation and you can impose conditions on us. We are not going to listen to it. But do we have to grow faster, do it differently compared to some of the developed nations? Yes, we are. So the smaller nations are looking to us to teach them how to do it. Right? That's why Tanzania wanted an IIT there, right? They didn't go to MIT and say set up an MIT, right? Because they're learning from us. So I think that's the road forward.
In recent time, we have seen a rise in global conflicts spanning from Russia-Ukraine to Israel-Palestine and many more. Where does India find itself in this global turmoil?
we find ourselves at a place where I'm not taking sides in your fight. I don't want you guys to fight. But if you feel you've been disrespected and you're right in your fight, you go fight. But when you come to talk to me, I'll tell you, don't fight. Figure out a peaceful solution. But at the same time, I will also show you that I can fight. Because if somebody messes with us, we'll smash them to pulp. But we'll also show to the world that we are not territorial and we are not expansionist. We've smashed them to pulp, but we've not occupied their territory. So that's the biggest signal that we are not expansionists. But do we know how to defend our sovereignty? Yes, we do. Do we respect others' sovereignty? Yes, we do. But are we going to side one over the other in a conflict? I don't think we are. We are going to come back and say, we are a person, if you two are fighting, you come and talk to me, you come and talk to me, I'll give you proper advice so that you can come continuing to talk to me. But that's why both Putin and Zelensky are calling the PM and saying, thank you very much. And even somebody like Trump is acknowledging the role that we are playing. Why? Because even in Iran and Israel, we are speaking to Israel as much as we are speaking to Iran. Because we are telling Israel, if somebody has attacked your sovereignty, your people, you've got the right to defend yourself. Just like we are telling Iran, if somebody is getting inside your territory and killing your leaders, and if you feel there should be a right to restrain, and if somebody is imposing sanctions that is improper on you, we back you. I don't think that's how it works. Is it easy to walk this path? No. But we are not a nation what takes the easy route out. We figure out things out. So this policy of strategic autonomy, this policy of trying to be equanimous with nations and trying to build our own relations with nations will come at a particular cost, will come with certain opportunities, certain roadblocks. But we'll figure it out. Why? Because we're giving the world another option. It's not an us versus them. There is an us, there is a them, and there is a we. So that's what we're doing.
I think the next question really ties in with what you said about our mindset and everything. This is of course in the context of the H1B visa decision and so on, which has drawn sharp reactions from India and other countries. Tying this with the mindset argument that you pitched earlier, how do you think where do you think we are in terms of providing opportunities for talent, both at home and abroad, and how do you think we can move forward with that?
See, a nation markets itself by saying, chase the American dream. Okay, Indian Americans are the ones who are today contributing, second most contributors to the American economy are Indian Americans, although they are just about 4% of the population. So that shows the amount of wealth we can create if we are given the opportunities. But that also shows that we will always remain alien in a foreign country. Okay? So there are learnings at multiple levels. Since we're talking people and policy, I'll tell you what. As a policy, I think governments need to realize that they have to create opportunities for local creators, local businesses to grow. There has to be an equal, ability to be able to set up operations and start operations in our own country rather than looking at another country. Cost of living and way of style of living. You want to go chase the American dream? Get ready to wash your own vessels, do your own laundry, clean up your own house, and also, service your own car, everything, because labor is not cheap there. Right? So, and pay more than 45% in taxes. Correct? There, up to 12 lakh rupees of income is not income tax free. Taxes start kicking in at much less. So, I'm just saying, so there are those pros. So, are you really living the American dream? Or the dream of a far better life? Okay, dollar to rupee terms, okay, I'm making so much of money, but how much are you spending? It's important. Can you feel rich at 20 lakh rupees per annum in India? You can feel good. Right? But can you feel rich at 20 lakh rupees per annum in the US? It's not so easy. So there's a difference. But I feel policy-wise, I think the government needs to create an environment, and here we have a federal structure. So in the US also, there are certain states which are very business-friendly. People want to set up shop there. So I think that's an opportunity for states in our country. Why can't states suddenly become saying that we are startup zones, we are creator zones, we will try and become the San Francisco of Bharat, and come create, come set up shop, come incorporate, come build up. That will take time, but I think policies are moving in that direction. For people who are so used to staying closed like this and protective, to slowly open up. So from an introvert, you'll become an ambivert, and then you'll become an extrovert. You can't become an extrovert overnight. So that personality change will happen. I think that's where the crux is. And the other thing is, stop thinking that life is good only outside the country. Today, life is much better in the country.
That is an indeed answer, sir. Apart from safeguarding India's interest on international forums, it is important for the country to tackle challenges arising from within the country as well as from its neighborhood. There are increasing instances of political instability in the neighboring countries of India. How do you think these developments affect India regarding foreign policies and relation with the neighbors?
Most of these neighborhoods were rated higher in the VDEM lists of democracies and stable democracies. So that talks about who's writing those reports and what their assessment of these countries are. So that's one. Secondly, aren't you happier that we are in India? Not in these countries where it can be a buck or banana republic overnight. Correct. Thirdly, you also study these countries closely. They started with relying overtly on one of the two hegemonies. And they tried to oscillate between these two hegemonies, and they got screwed in the process. So how did they get screwed in the process? Because the people got agitated and they created toppled governments. So this toppling of governments, if they are not favorable to you, is being done by entities. So it's not purely local. There is a foreign interference. And there are nations which are strong, which will always ensure that other nations and other regions don't rise so that they keep them weak. Why? Because the entire labor force supply is happening from these regions. Now if these regions start becoming strong, and they don't want, there is no migration that happens, there's no drain that happens, their labor force will be gone. And these nations will not continue to supply cheap labor. These nations will not continue to import and continue to rely heavily on those nations. So this is a classic act of statecraft. So we as a country need to realize that there are many who will want to divide us too, because they will gain from us. When you are rising, when you start to do well, what do those people who are already established try to do? They try to pin you down. They try to corner you. They try to make it difficult for you to rise. What do? You become stronger. You take a few blows. You learn to be resilient. But more importantly, you keep yourself together. You don't allow yourself to wither away. So I think that's what's important. The other thing we as a nation did do is, I don't know, how would I say, we need to learn from the Chinese or the PLA, from this part, that they think long term. See, in our own scriptures, there are two terms called Sarpa Drishti and Garuda Drishti. Just translate it. Sarpa is snake, Drishti is vision. Snake's vision is very myopic, short-sighted. It can't see far. So it uses its tongue because it can't see. It sees only till this distance and reacts. What's a Garuda? It's up there in the sky, and from there it can spot even a small rodent running around. So it's got far-sightedness. We as a nation need that far-sightedness. Had we had the far-sightedness in our foreign policy, we would have ensured that we are the big brother in this neighborhood. We would have ensured that Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, they don't get unstable. There is a certain level. And we would have seen what will happen 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now. We didn't. Or perhaps we thought, let's wish it away. You can't wish these things away. Statecraft, you can't wish things. You have to ensure this will happen. And again, Kautilya has written all about it. Bhishma taught all of this to Yudhishthira in the battlefield. So it's there. All this knowledge is there. Either we read it and we don't follow it as a nation, or the policymakers did, or sometimes it's beyond your control because we've got so many things to handle ourselves that we can't take care of the neighborhood. So most importantly, we need to become strong. If Bharat becomes strong, Bharat becomes stable, Bharat has its own military strength, then it can offer protection and help to our neighbors against anybody else, a third entity which wants to come in. So that is a process that is started now. So it will take some time. Till then we'll have to manage with whatever is happening in the neighborhood.
I think this is especially important in terms of efforts related to ASEAN, the export of COVID vaccines and so on. From the neighborhood, I would like to draw our attention to what is happening inside the country, various internal issues. One very poignant issue that is currently raising is the issue in Ladakh. Mr. Wangchuk stands arrested as we speak and so on. The thing is, we have witnessed similar instances in the recent past where government policies have been met with a lot of retaliation and so on. So how can, since we are talking about public policy and so on, what considerations should the government keep in mind while implementing different policies, while also maintaining social harmony and stability?
Governments need to foresee that there is trouble brewing. Sonam Wangchuk is not the key conspirator in what has happened right now with the violence in Ladakh, because he may be one of them. He's not the main person. There is a puppeteer and there are others who seem to have encroached into that space. And he is an entity who cannot do much because he's seeing everything, but he can't do much because he's also influenced now. He's been protesting for the last 3-4 years, off and on. And there seems to be some dissonance, which the government of the day perhaps understands, perhaps doesn't understand. Ladakh is a strategically important place for Bharat. It's got one of the most amazing cultures, people, tribes, which are inherent to our culture. We can't let go of that. Geographically, it's critically located between China and Pakistan. We've already lost 68,000 square kilometers of Ladakh that is Aksai Chin. It's a big loss for us and we are paying the price for it. We didn't see it at that time. Now there are arguments that it was either Aksai Chin or Arunachal Pradesh. Why should that be? Both are ours, we should have never let go of it. But perhaps we were not strong enough, we didn't see it, all that. But today what's happening is, there are entities who want to create problem for us in Ladakh. Think back and say, when did these protests start? They started post Galwan. What did we do in Galwan? We stood up to an entity which thought that we will not stand up. We occupied positions which they thought we will not occupy. Now, statehood for Ladakh is an issue currently because Ladakh is very sparsely populated. If I put filters between central administration and state administration in a strategically volatile area because there are no defined borders, it's so much more difficult for the forces to move in. It's so much more difficult for counteraction to happen. It's so much more difficult for the center to take strong measures to secure people of Ladakh and also the territory of Ladakh. Because there will be police involved, state government involved, multiple filters will come. So we can't do it. Ladakh never wanted statehood. Ladakh only wanted it to be recognized as an independent union territory so that it could get all the central constitutional rights. Because earlier it was Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh. But how many of us ever said Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh? We always said Jammu Kashmir. We never said Ladakh. So Ladakh didn't get its due. So they celebrated. Sonam Wangchuk was one of the first people to celebrate it getting a union territory. So who are the people who are now doing it's a subject matter of investigation. But Sonam Wangchuk, I admire him for the conservationist that he is. The fact that he helped a desert region find ice stupas, he's worked a lot. I would also like to know who cleared his visa for Pakistan. It's a fair question to ask. Today we are saying he travelled to Pakistan, but hey, who cleared his visa? Somebody in government knew he's going, right? Why didn't you red flag it then? Business cannot happen. I cannot go, you cannot go, everybody cannot go. Normal person who's got family cannot. This person is travelling from Ladakh to Pakistan for a conservation conference and you're not watching that person and you're not red flagging. Especially at a time where we've got no love lost with Pakistan. So there are some slips which have happened. some issues which have happened. We'll see, what it unearths. Now we've given to understand that there are some foreign nationals, persons of interest who've been found present in Ladakh. So we'll see. There is an ethnic, demographic alteration, which is an issue, which could be a challenge. So we'll have to see what happens in those cases. So in a big nation like ours, in a multi-diverse, nation like ours, these issues will happen. Sometimes we think intelligence को क्यों नहीं पता? Intelligence को पता होता है. उस पर act करने का काम किसी और का होता है. Right? So you will know. You've sent a file here. Somebody who's to act has not acted. It's resting there. They've ignored that fact or thought it's not such a big deal. Suddenly it flares up, then they've got a counterpart. And you see this trend. Some reason or the other, there are sporadic riots, issues across different states of our country. So there are people who are trying to test. Can we do something like Bangladesh in Bharat? Can we do something like Nepal in Bharat? Can we do something like Sri Lanka in Bharat? Can we do something like Pakistan in Bharat? They'll keep testing. We have to be resilient enough to not fall for it. So there is a challenge. Is internal security going to be a challenge? It's going to be a challenge in the near future. Can our intelligence systems work better? Yes. Are the people of Ladakh, all of them for violence? Not at all. They're amazing people. Is Sonam Wangchuk a terrorist? Not at all. He's not. He's not. But is there something more to it than meets the eye? Yes. And should that be investigated? Yes.
So a lot of these flare-ups often happen in response to some government decision or the other, whether it was the mayhem that was unleashed in Delhi following the Far Law protest, or whether if we go back to the pre-COVID days, there was a CAA protest and so on. A lot of these things happen in response to government decisions. So while we can account for foreign influence and these malicious elements and so on, is there something to be said about how we frame our policies, how they are advertised in some sense to people? Why do so many of these things happen in response to government decisions?
Because there are people who want to oppose. But we want actions to be done. We've elected a government to be able to act. Don't you want farmers to be empowered? Don't you want contract farming? Don't you want the farmer to be able to sell their produce right at where their fields are, rather than having to come to the mandi where they're facing the middlemen? Yes. Did the government not stitch the narrative properly? Of course. Did they allow protesters from 1.5 states to hold the entire country to ransom? Yes, they did. Should they have not done it? Yes, they should not have. Have agriculture reforms been pushed back by at least 2.5 decades because no other leader will dare touch agricultural reforms? Nationally, yes. But is agriculture in the concurrent list? Yes. Are states quietly adopting all these farm laws? Yes, they are. So states are quietly adopting all of these farm laws, if not all of them, majority of them. But there are lobbies who demand MSP here and orchestrate these protests, and at WTO say you should not give MSP. So this is double game also. So these are things which exist. This is real politics. But was CA a good law? Yes. Did they take so much time to notify it? Yes. Has it actually helped too many people? No. So there is a problem. The government has a problem in terms of implementation. The government has a problem in terms of stitching the narrative right. But not all decisions or all protests are happening because of government decisions. Sometimes the courts also make such rulings. The whole problem in Bangladesh emerged from a court ruling. The whole issue in Nepal emerged from a court ruling. The whole issue in Manipur emerged from a court ruling. It was not a government policy. It was a court ruling to give ST status to the Meiteis. So it's very easy to forget the fact that it started because of a court ruling and because the courts thought this is justice. And they took those who did not agree, they took to the streets because they said we'll do mob justice. So how is mob justice okay? So that means tomorrow you don't agree with somebody, you'll go and riot and you'll get your things done. That's anarchy. That's not democracy. Mob justice is not right. So, yes, I don't think none of these policies were against the interests of the people. They were not. But does the government err in stitching the narrative? Sometimes, yes. And do we have to pay a price for that? Yes.
Since we have now talked about internal issues, international relations and so on, I would now like to draw our attention to the current state of the Indian economy and how that falls into while we are a country that is growing and developing rapidly, what can we do to ensure that this progress remains sustainable, inclusive, and how do we ensure that the benefits of all these decisions, these changes, are accessible to people across all geographical regions in our country and over long periods of time?
One of the things is we need to be ready to work 10 to 12 hours a day. I am not joking. I'm not saying it needs to be standard policy. I'm not saying we need to work 90 hours a week. No, I'm not saying that. You work 5 days a week, you work 6 days a week, but work at least 60 hours. 60 to 65 hours of work days we need to do. And I'll tell you why. Because you look at nations that grew fast, they've worked harder. We have to increase our output for us to be able to grow. And we have to do it. We can't look at cushy jobs that give us 8 hours a day and a fat salary and 5 days a week, and I'm not going to do anything more than my shift to your shift. Then we as a nation will not grow. Why? Because we are 4% of the land mass, 20% of the world's population. So we have to work harder. Our output has to be harder. We have to condition ourselves to work hard for the next 20 years. Work really hard. And there's no substitute to that hard work. And I'm not saying that and the other thing is we need to okay and support labor reforms. Unless we support labor reforms, you will not become a manufacturing entity. We are a service-oriented economy. Services don't allow you growth. Exports come to a certain extent from services, but services have to be backed with manufacturing. We are not doing core manufacturing. We are not leaders in core infrastructure. We are not leaders in aircraft manufacturing, shipbuilding, ports. We don't have the wherewithal. We are starting it all now. So that means we have to work harder. We have to run faster. We've got to learn in 6 months what people have learned in 6 years. We've got to do in 10 years what people have done in 50 years. We have to do in 15 years what people have done in 100 years. Because we are playing catch up. And that's the advantage for us, that we are a 146 crore country with more than 65 crore people who are young, who can work hard. So I think in our heads we need to be ready to work hard. That's the key part for us in terms of our growth story and to sustain this. But there's one more challenge. We have to work hard, we have to grow, but we have to grow sustainably. The biggest example is campus and outside. When you live in an environment like this with trees and all, it's already 3 degrees cooler inside the campus compared to just outside on the main road. See the difference? So we have to do that sustainably. We have to ensure that our carbon footprint is lower so that we don't push ourselves into a void where we start choking. So those things, so we're doing well even there. Even with our UN SDGs of generating non-fossil fuel electricity, we have achieved our targets 5 years in advance. We've hit 500 gigawatts in 2025 compared to 2030. So we're achieving that. So if we put our mind to it, we can achieve that across regions. Now, if you were to say how can development happen across regions, that's for the state governments. Because investment policy can be framed at the center, but federal competition has to happen. Unless each of our states, where we come from originally, start investing in that aggressively, growth will not happen. And most importantly, states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, they have to really amp it up. It's happening in UP, I can see it. They will endeavor to do it in Bihar. They've been trying to do it for a while. Because these were largely the labor suppliers, workforce suppliers, to the industry which happened on the western and the southern belt. But if they also start generating and they also start improving, then you will not have too much of urban migration. You will have equitable disposition. Poverty levels in these states will come down, and overall the country will go up. So if a Maharashtra becomes a 1 trillion economy, UP becomes a 1 trillion economy, Bihar becomes a 1 trillion economy, Tamil Nadu becomes a 1 trillion economy, we are already as a nation touching 7 trillion. So that's the way forward.
For a country like India with vast social and regional diversity, GDP alone may not capture the full picture of progress. How should India focus not just on GDP growth but also the other ways of measuring real development?
one of the things people say is, oh, you're saying you're fourth largest GDP, third largest economy, soon to be, etc. But what is your per capita? So you're not. But per capita, we are saddled with a 146 crore population. So we will struggle at the per capita level. That can come only when we start creating more opportunities. We become creators of jobs. We have more entrepreneurs and not more employees. That's the only way this can happen. And the other way is we need to start monetizing agriculture better. 30 to 40% of our product, of our produce in our country, be it in horticulture, be it in fruits, be it in grains, supplies, anything we take, 30 to 40% is wasted. We don't use it. Imagine if you were to convert that, monetize it, how much revenue we're going to generate in agriculture. Rather than moving away from agriculture, agri-based products, and agriculture includes dairy, agriculture includes poultry, agriculture includes meat, fish, all of this, shrimps. No, these are all the Prime Minister is talking about it very aggressively. Huge potential, and there's no income tax on it. Think about it. If you're able to use our knowledge, our science, technology to improve agriculture output and agriculture produce while using regenerative methods, while using sustainable methods, we've got a great story to tell in terms of increasing the average, standard of living of the person. The other thing is, and that's something which the Prime Minister has also been talking about, the government's been thinking about it, is that urban migration has to stop. There's data that says nearly 22 crore people will again migrate to certain top 20 cities by 2030. So imagine the pressure that our cities will face. But what if I were to ensure that they don't have to migrate? What if I start something like what UP has done, that is one district, one product. That means each district finds one core product around which everything else evolves. So if I have 720 districts and talukas across the country, and let's look at 1100 blocks, if you look at it like that, and each block creates one particular product around which people are employed, and because of which there are basic services, so carpentry, electrician, milkman, everybody is there in that area. What you are doing is you are releasing the pressure from urbanization, urban cities, and you're also moving towards a certain urban kind of a living. So the rural areas continue to retain their rural ethos, but they also become urban in their mindset and their standard of living. Sadhguru has talked about a particular model where he says that let's try and build 2 40-story buildings where the entire village lives, and there is another building which is the school. There is the next building which is a college, college or a higher education thing, and then there is a hospital. All of this is made in a 10-acre area. Okay, and if the village has 450 acres, 440 acres, the rest of the land is all agriculture. So living is at the center, agriculture is all around. So the spread doesn't happen. You are not wasting farmland. And at every 5 acres you plant trees. So that's one idea. There are others who have said, all right, let's try and bunch all the houses to one side of the field and then put this one. So out of 400 acres, 50 acres, others have got models. But there are models through which, and then what happens, electricity supply, you can even set up windmills, so you can generate your own wind, use wind and solar energy. At the top of these sheets, you put solar sheets on top of all of these structures, so you're generating your own electricity. Standard of living, standard of life goes up. So that's the only solution. We have to think about all of this. But most importantly, I'd like to see a lot of people creating employment and opportunities, cooperatives to improve agriculture and agri-based foods. I think there's huge potential there. We don't see it. We think it's too down market and not cool for us. But I know a lot of my friends and a lot of some alumni also from IIT who've gone back to farming and they're doing very well.
Even government policies address some of the challenges which we discussed here as people are migrating. It is important for the public to engage with the issues of our times and contribute to the country's progress. Journalism journalism plays an important role in helping people stay informed, shaping public opinion, and holding power to account, thereby forming the fourth pillar of democracy. How do you evaluate the current state of free journalism in India, especially in light of increasing complaints pertaining to the government clamping down on the freedom of press and right to dissent in country?
We have more publications and more websites and more channels than 40 countries put together. How is journalism not democratized in our country? See, it's the same guys who are talking about there's more press freedom in Pakistan and there's more press freedom in Bangladesh compared to India. Now, how do I trust those reports? You really believe that they are far more stable democracies and there's more press freedom there? A country with two state media is run by state media. How can it have press freedom? It's not. We are not. Our state media is the weakest. Private media is perhaps the strongest in our country, across the world if you look at models. So, and state influence means not necessarily center, right? We've got 28 states and union territories and each of them want to exercise influence. Power means you want to exercise a certain level of influence. Media is a cost center. It does not generate its own profits. It depends on advertising revenues, subscription revenues and sponsorships to continue, right? In our country, we don't have a subscription model. You are ready to pay 650 rupees a month for Netflix, but you're not ready to pay 60 rupees for all the news channels every month. You're ready to pay 999 rupees per annum for Amazon Prime, but you're not ready to pay 9 rupees per month for the top 10 channels on your phone. So, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge of our mindset. But news is far more democratized today than it was ever before. Because I don't need to stay to only one masthead, one newspaper in the south, one newspaper in the north, one newspaper in the east and one newspaper in the west in English, and similar case in the regional languages, be it in Hindi, Tamil, Gujarati, Marathi, one big masthead, and they will decide the narrative. It's not the case. I have the option of reading 10 different platforms for the same story and have a comprehensive viewpoint, and based on my own personal confirmation bias, choose whichever perspective I agree with. Today, journalism or in terms of media is far more democratized than ever before. YouTubers can sit there and say whatever they want and they are not censured under the IIT Act because they consider themselves as a platform and not publishers. They don't even have the onus or the burden of proof on them. We have the burden of proof. As a publisher, the burden of proof lies on us. The burden of fact-checking lies on us. The burden of being honest lies on us. But social media platforms and YouTubers don't have that burden. They can sit there and waffle on and say whatever they want. Now it's up to your own intelligence to decide whether that is true or not. How credible is it? Fact-check them, no? Check them. So, and the other thing is, we need to also dissect or distill between opinion and news. So, opinion is personal. News is mandatory and standard. So, an event occurs, okay. What do I infer from that event is opinion. That can differ. I'm not going to weigh in on that. But in terms of narratives, in terms of facts, in terms of truth, when we are in a state of war, will you believe the enemy or those who are amplifying the enemy, or will you believe yourself? You've lost the war the moment you believe the enemy. That's our state of mind. Don't blame that on journalists or anybody else. So, that's a narrative war, and that's deliberately done. Now, if we allow them to sneak into our heads and allow them to dictate terms to us, they'll control us. But if we turn them around and say, no, Kauravas and Pandavas fought with each other, but whenever there was an external threat, they were 105. We as a nation need to be that. So, that is a different story. But I feel today journalism is far more democratized and it's far more difficult to control or censure than ever before. And this government has been far too lenient with a lot of people who spread a lot of vitriol and a lot of misinformation and allowed them to continue to prosper. In fact, I would hold them there. There are certain state governments who are very intolerant. But alright, Janta, whenever it comes back to them to choose them, they can decide whether they want the same intolerance or not.
Especially in light of this explosion of so-called opinion makers, influencers and so on, what advice do you have for not only young people here but everyone in general, based on your experience, about how we can consume news critically in this age of misinformation? Examples of which we have seen during the COVID pandemic, during Operation Sindoor and so on. How do we look at news? How do we
use these instances as filters? You will see certain people who continue to remain frank, honest, rational and factual. You will see a trend. There will be those who will be sensationalists, there will be those who will be downright misinformationists, there will be those who will be anarchists. You will be able to segregate them. Then you decide who you choose. That choice is yours. You have the power to choose that. And I think that's the greatest freedom. And I can't influence that and I don't want to influence. But you will be able to see the trend. And eventually you will be able to settle in certain things. Yeah, from my own perspective, I will not say anything that compromises my country. For me, country comes first. Everything else is secondary. So what's in the interest of my country, and will I talk of my country in the face of anything or everything? Yes. So when you come to me, even in a situation where it was dire for us, we will still be Bharat plus and Bharat company. Yeah, postmortem will happen later. We'll turn around and say, should we do this better? The criticism will be constructive because the interest of our country is paramount for us. So that's my point of view. That's what we try and do on the right side. Are we against anybody or we take a position? We try and take whatever position we take with a certain level of information and facts, and there is a nuanced perspective. And we leave it for the viewer to decide whether they want to agree or disagree with it. I'm not going to take a gun at your head and say, you have to agree with me. No, I'm not like that. If you don't agree with it, perfectly fine. That doesn't make you a lesser person in my eyes. It shouldn't make me a lesser person in your eyes if you don't agree with me. Here today what happens is we are unfriending people because their political ideology or their opinion is different than us. I think we are better people than that. But sadly that's the story.
Thank you, sir. As we draw to the end of our discussion, I'd like to thank you for your astute remarks on the various ways in which we have opportunities in terms of moving forward, and how we can use this framework of people, policy and potential to drive our country's growth forward. We can now open the floor for some audience questions.